A peculiar characteristic of poetic literature is its ghostliness in the memory. That is to say, its power to haunt our minds long after we have read it. Most art forms may be said to inflict us in a similar way. For instance, when we view Saturn devouring his sun, our dreams are perhaps wounded afterwards. It converts our thoughts, conscious and unconscious, into a text, authored in part by Goya and in part by ourselves. Afterthought becomes the subject of the artwork. And yet, if we did not create the artwork entirely, our experience of it possessing and overthrowing us in such a period is limited. We imagine Goya as a tortured mind that puts up with that particular intensity on our behalf. Even though he is long dead, we use him as a way of siphoning off the potency of the work in this respect. Saturn is weakened over time by the fact we are aware that a man already fought with the image which we behold. We consider that the painting before us is probably a less terrifying version of something that appeared to him in the darkness, and by doing so, conquer it. This cannot be done with certain poems. Whether written by an author alive or dead, they provide us with a sense of being possessed that is at once immediate and ever increasing. When we recite such poems aloud, our own voices become the tools of creation, and for a minute we are haunted as the creating party, just as much as the perceiving. While this sense of being haunted as the creator is synthetic, or projected onto the writer's actual process of creation, it is nonetheless persuasive in the moment. The poem ceases to be an experience of the writer invading us and using us, and comes to represent an overpowering force that is drastically different and strange. I can think of no better vehicle for these sentiments than a poem by John Keats. Scrawled into the corner of one of his greater manuscripts, and posthumously titled, "This Living Hand." This living hand, now warm and capable of earnest grasping, would, if it were cold, and in the icy silence of the tomb, so haunt thy days and chill thy dreaming nights, that thou would wish thine own heart dry of blood, so in my veins red life might stream again, and thou be conscience calmed. See, here it is. I hold it towards you. The poem dramatizes being read as a means of keeping the hand living. In the narrative, even if the hand were dead in the icy silence of the tomb, it would haunt us through the poem until its veins were once again streaming with red life. So, as a performer of this dynamic, I was, so to speak, made the thrall of the living hand by reciting the poem. And for I spoke the poem to you, the effect was double in your case. You heard me talk as a vessel for the hand, the poem's eye, not merely another life source like yourself. You were thus narratively subordinated by the hand and one of its thralls in hearing my recitation. The poem may then be said to drain reader and listener alike, and place us, no matter how we are organized, into a shape that insists on a dynamic of control. Unlike the painting that we learn to dismiss as the artist's predominant strife, the poem involves us so intimately that such an escape is not provided for. Its narrative draws attention to how our imaginations are leached in order to create its images. The completed hand is held towards us, a simplistic image we cannot help but create, and represents our submission. In seeing it, we confirm that it is living and has therefore drained us. Emerging from a dead, pre-considered state, the hand reanimates with our consideration. We make it living by paying attention to it, and it in turn promises to devour us until we ourselves are made as bodiless and unknowable as it once was. If you do not realize this effect after hearing the poem for the first time, then you shall on remembering the images that were created by it. For thinking of the poem is the narrative equivalent of being possessed by the hand, recapitulations of the images and phrases involved in it become all the more spectral than they would have been on their own. they will confirm that you are still living within the boundaries of the text. Its formal awareness of our reading it and thinking of it prevents satire. Each representation of the work that we are exposed to shows us for thralls, so parodies would only allow its spirit to thrive in repetition. By our act of seeing, or seeing in recollection, we are branded as subordinates. We need not willingly trudge through darkness in our sleep to know the such, see Saturn chewing as he was in oil, but come to be aware that we have read, and in reading have made ourselves the prey of a long-dead dream. And so, by allowing itself to be more of an instruction manual for thought, poetic literature can overtake the process of thinking where portraiture could but contaminate it.